Welcome to the Family Banking Show with your hosts Rob, Derek, and John, where we dive into the world of the infinite banking concept and discuss personal banking strategies to secure your legacy and build generational wealth. We're glad you're here, and we hope this episode serves you well.
If you're interested in learning more about setting up your own family banking system, send an email to thefamilybankingshow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Family Banking Show. We are your hosts, Derek, Rob, and John. Guys, how's it going this week?
It is pitch black at 7 a.m. I was like, oh, it must be 6 a.m. Look at like what? It's just crazy. It's funny how I just get so, weather talk again, but it's it's just so dark, and it's overcast plus this time of year.
Yeah.
Crazy how dark it is at this time.
A recent update for me is I've gotten super interested in just health and metrics, and I guess that's the way my brain works, is numbers and metrics and data.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have diabetes or anything like that, but there's what's called a continuous glucose monitor that monitors your blood sugar and your blood glucose to see just kind of how your body responds to things. And my wife actually got it for her pregnancy in lieu of, like, are you all familiar with it? I know Derek, you are, like, with the blood sugar syrupy liquid that they make you drink and then take a blood test.
Yeah.
My wife was able to, I guess, avoid that and then instead get this continuous glucose monitor. So it's cool that she doesn't have to do the drink, and she can now monitor things more real time. And she got an extra one in the mail. And so I, decided to try it on yesterday, actually.
Yeah.
And so all day I'm just kind of obsessing over just like the little metrics and the curves that come with
Fascinating.
it, and how exercise, changes it and so forth. So that's been, eating up my time a lot recently.
Does it have like a little pin, or has it got a contact patch? Is that like
Yeah,
is it a
it's
pin?
like on the back of my arm right now. Yeah, the little patch that you see many
Yeah.
diabetics
Diabetics.
have
Yep.
to have, and then
Right.
monitor their insulin and so forth. But
Hmm.
uh,
That's
it's
fascinating.
apparently really helpful indicator of metabolic health, and where your body's going long term, and kind of catch things before they become an issue. So uh,
I wonder
anyway,
if after some time you'll be able to kind of feel your body, like you'll be able to sense it without actually having the sensor on you as to like what your glucose levels are doing.
that would be ideal, because otherwise it kind of hurts, and yeah, kind of
Yeah.
a pain to do, but
That's fascinating.
fun to nerd out on.
Do you notice changes like if after you eat the glucose will spike and you do see the curves?
Definitely.
They correlate with like daily events.
Yeah, like sugary liquids, which I don't normally drink, like Gatorade or lemonade or soda or anything, but and yes, I say soda, not pop. Uh, yeah, we can have all sorts of conversation about it, but it's really interesting to see what changes and what doesn't, honestly. So
Wow, that's awesome. Cool.
I'm convinced if you don't say pop in Minnesota, you're not really Minnesotan.
on to that one. I'm holding on.
I think we're the only state, aren't maybe Minnesota and Wisconsin, that actually say pop.
It may be.
Chicago, Illinois guys will say it, but
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah.
But aren't there some other states like Southeast that everything's Coke?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
You have an
I'm
orange.
from the
Even if you want
South.
a Sprite, it's Coke.
What kind of Coke do you want? Sprite. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
How fun. All right. Well, guys, we'll get down to business here. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about kind of the myths behind accumulation phase in your personal finances. So for a quick explanation, the accumulation phase for many people, it's when you start your first professional job all the way up to the day that you retire. Most people are accumulating their wealth inside of a 401k, IRA, 403b, some sort of retirement account, and working, saving, investing inside of this account. But you don't really get to enjoy it during that working career. It's something that oftentimes we put off, and then we start the distribution phase, which is kind of that retirement phase where you're able to draw down your assets to fund your retirement lifestyle. So, guys, I'll turn it over to John, kind of have John explain his some of the interesting ideas behind this, and then we'll just have a conversation surrounding it.
Yeah, no, this is something I'm absolutely convinced about, passionate about. It's a philosophy, I think, rather than looking at discrete numbers. Although the number comparison ends up, in favor of turning away from the accumulation theory. So I think it's more of a mindset, it's more of a philosophy, and honestly, when we kind of translate things in a faith context, I think it has significant implications on how we live out our faith, our lives. Like this is like finances in and of themselves is not evil. Like money is not evil. It's the love of money, and it's how we relate to it that can literally change lives. Like for much better or for much worse, and it can corrupt. And so getting this philosophy and identifying it first and foremost, just what are we even believing in a default like American financial industry? What do people commonly say, and how does that uh, kind of intrude into our own hearts, into our own minds,
Yeah.
and affect our lives, like truly affect our lives? And I'm a firm believer that we're all made in the image of God. We're all made to create value in the world and to live on purpose. And what we're talking about in this episode, I think fundamentally hinders us reaching that full maximum potential of what our purpose is and where God is leading us by the nature of the inefficiency and the lack of purpose that we're able to get from this financial theory. So the theory in and of itself is accumulation theory, just like Derek said, where we, for 20 to 40 years, however long we're working, we accumulate, 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 never touch it. And then one day, someday, we hope that it reaches some magical number that then we can distribute and live off for the rest of our lives. And what we're challenging is that one, that's not very efficient. And two, it's not very hopeful. Like most people doing this for the last, 50 or so years, there's not a high rate of success. And three, what about that huge span of time, the 40 years or so, that are probably our best years, probably the most, meaningful and significant years as we're raising our families, as we're building our marriages, we're building our businesses and whatever we're doing, um, that we're likely missing out on what we are accumulating and what we are trying to build towards this hypothetical, default retirement structure, even in and of itself. So um, I think this is a really important philosophy to challenge. It's a really important thing to identify whether or not it's kind of crept into the way we view money, the way we view assets, and so forth. So, looking forward to diving into it right now.
Yeah, I'd say if the listeners recall from last week, we talked about this application called Currents and the idea of unconscious saving versus unconscious spending. And one of the benefits of Currents is that once you actually start to see your nest egg build, it's like psychologically your brain flips from just unconsciously spending it down to wanting to preserve it and to grow it. And that's a also a psychological effect, a negative effect of this growing nest egg because you never ever want to spend it down. So you're leaving it there and just hoping to live off of the interest. That's the accumulation theory that ties into that. So that's kind of like the double-edged sword of when we see an asset growing that it's just like for future, this pool, this pile of gold, we don't want to touch it. And and then that just limits you, that limits the life you can live while you're doing that accumulation phase. And then you're just waiting. It's kind of like waiting to be on the descent into
Yeah.
into death, right? You're just saving so you can die slowly. It's I don't know, or die comfortably. I don't know, but it's an interesting mindset shift, and I think this is a great idea of how you can talk about how you can potentially break out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I really enjoyed that John's going to be talking about a little bit more is that living on purpose or living on mission that John is so passionate about. And
Hmm.
I think of our 3-year-old and how we say, hey, go and play, go play pretend, go, dream essentially. And how many of us adults have lost that ability to actually pretend and dream and wonder what life could be like in the future and that action steps that you should be taking today to get there. um, it's so easy for us to just think, oh, I guess I'm kind of stuck in this career. I make good money, I'm putting money away, but they have no vision for what life might look like beyond that career, or what life could look like in conjunction with that career. They're just
Hmm.
dirtling around is kind of the way that I explain it, is you're just going through the motions and without any real purpose, mission, values, vision for what tomorrow might bring. That's just such a lame way to live, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm really excited for John to dig into that a little bit more. And John, you had mentioned previously to Rob and I this book by Garrett Gunderson, who's one of your favorite authors and kind of a mentor to you. Why don't you go ahead and explain some of his ideas behind this utilization rather than accumulation?
Yes, so this one of the main ideas of how this is explained and communicated is in Killing Sacred Cows by Garrett Gunderson. And if you haven't read that book, if you haven't heard of that book, I highly recommend it, especially even the audiobook if you're into audiobooks. I think it's really well narrated by Garrett Gunderson himself. There's even comedy sketches that he does on money. Really kind of cements the lessons that we learn in this, and put some levity to it. So I'm going to read actually excerpts from I believe it's chapter 2 that talks about the myth of accumulation theory, right? Um, and I think he states it really well. And we kind of take it and run with it and put it into a faith context, into a infinite banking and just life purpose context. But it really speaks to it. So it talks about um, wealth. Let's see. We have been indoctrinated to believe that wealth is determined by the amount of money that we have accumulated and the net worth as the best indicator of wealth. According to financial pundits and media, the road to wealth is to accumulate money, and while the dream is to eventually, one day, someday, live off the interest from our savings and investments that has been housed in a 401k and IRA. And by the way, to never touch the principal. We're
Hmm.
taught that we need to develop a risk tolerance and develop an appropriate asset allocation that makes no sense to us or our financial planners. Like all myths, the accumulation theory poses a dilemma. It tells us to accumulate as much money as possible and let it stagnate in a 401k or mutual fund for years, increasing at a glacial pace, if at all. But why do we accumulate money if not to use it? Even when we finally do want to use it, we're afraid to risk the security of our nest egg. And the irony is that if we don't use the money, we've hoarded it all these years for nothing. And what good is money if we don't use it? Utilizing money, that is, putting it to work to create value, is the fastest, and this is a key point, the fastest and safest path to wealth. Utilization means we stop waiting for financial freedom to come to us instead of being proactive in creating it ourselves right now. It's also about prioritizing, and this is, again, a huge point. It's about prioritizing our immediate enjoyment of life and creating favorable conditions for long-term enjoyment rather than locking up our assets for fear of losing them. So, a
Mhm.
couple points I want to extract from that. And, first and foremost, uh, who, like, do you see any financial institutions, any corporations, any like actual businesses leveraging this strategy, accumulation theory? Do you see like, JP, yeah, Wells Fargo or JP Morgan or any corporation say, actually, we're going to put all of our profits away in this one little nest egg, and then maybe eventually we're gonna, distribute when the time comes. Like, no, they're constantly leveraging their profits. They're utilizing it. They know the flow of money. And so, particularly when it comes to financial institutions, they spend tens of billions of dollars in marketing to get us, regular citizens and customers, to adopt this philosophy without they themselves using this philosophy for their own businesses. And doesn't that make you a little suspicious? I know that's a Nelson Nash
Mm-hmm.
ism. Wouldn't that make you a little suspicious? And so it's all for their benefit. If you read a book called Leap, A Lifetime Economic Acceleration Process, the author Bob Castellone talks about the four rules of a financial institution, which is they want our money, they want it on a regular basis, on a systematic basis for as long as possible. Or excuse me, number three is they want to keep it for as long as possible. And then the fourth rule is when it's time for us to receive it, they want to give us back as little as possible for as long as possible.
Right.
So that's, I mean, truly for a 21-year-old fresh out of college, starting their first job all the way until death, the financial institution is benefiting like multiple 1,000% fold, leveraging
Mm.
that money, recycling that money for their benefit while we're getting, a measly, some people say 10%. I'd argue it's much less. Um, that ends up, keeping us tied to that system. And so that's where Gary Gunderson flips it. He says the utilization of money is to, what he says right here, prioritize immediate enjoyment of life and create favorable conditions for long-term enjoyment. So utilization of money, well, I mean, the easiest example is cash flowing rental real estate, where you're not only getting appreciation like you hopefully would in a stock or 401k, but you're also getting cash flow and you're also getting tax benefits. And it's also like very real time impacting your life and helping you continue to build for maybe the next asset and the next and the next. And then you can really start to have options and flexibility and control, um, all hopefully through a properly designed whole life insurance leveraging infinite banking, to then create the life that you don't want to retire from. So I just rambled there. What are some other points y'all want to talk about, within that context?
Yeah, when you mentioned what institutions, do that, follow that model of just accumulate, well, or businesses, well, they don't. But it's interesting, but ironically, that's the process that they set up by default for all of their employees. So the moment you get hired on, you just automatically get enrolled in a 401k program, and they just start automatically taking your dollars to hang on to till you retire, for the next 40 years. And so it's the businesses themselves don't do that, but they institute programs that just automatically get the masses, into that. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It makes you wonder, right? Um, that's the default that they all set up, and put in place. So
Mhm.
if you think about do what I say versus do what I do, that's a clear example of that. So.
Yeah. And how many business owners really believe like that 401k is not just a nice incentive to keep employees around, but we're doing it, because we care about our employees and we want what's best for them. Well, if they actually sat down and considered it, they would think, well, maybe this utilization model is actually a much better approach, a better system for the employee than that accumulation phase of the 401k and IRAs and all those sorts of things. Um, yeah, I like how Gunderson puts it, utilization is the fastest and the safest way to build wealth. And before we hit record, we were just talking about opportunities for a small business just to do seasonal work that nobody else wants to do, a service-based business. And yes, it might require a lot of your time, but how many people, hate the job that they're in, but they don't really have funds available to go and start a business because it's all locked up inside that 401k. Whereas they could have that side hustle or side business, and then it might become a full-time thing and could potentially become a franchise thing. And now all of a sudden, it's something that's going to last a long time that can benefit you much longer and require less of your time and energy. But because people don't have those funds available to start that business because it's locked up, nobody's ever able to take advantage of that. Nobody's ever able to dream that way and to envision a day and a lifestyle that might be different than what they have right now. So
Yep.
yeah, I really appreciate his take on utilization and really, the infinite banking concept is one of the best ways to do that because you've got access to that cash value while it continues to grow uninterrupted to be able to do those unconventional investment opportunities, business opportunities, lifestyle opportunities that you wouldn't have in the traditional model.
Yeah, and Derek, to build on that in terms of how infinite banking can help with that, enable that is what if you think about like you're planning for this distribution period of your life by accumulating, but if first off, if you don't have protection of your income,
Yeah.
one disability or your own death can just totally destroy this distribution plan that you had for your family. So why not put something in place to protect your family first with a early cash value whole life insurance policy, but then you build up that cash value, like you're saying, Derek, that you can then leverage. So not only you're protecting your family and you're protecting your future distribution, but you're creating your own personal family banking system that you can then draw from to
Yeah.
get cash for opportunities while you still have uninterrupted growth and tax deferred growth and all the benefits. Why wouldn't you do it?
And not
This-
just for me, but for my wife. She
Yeah,
could start something, my kids,
yeah,
eventually grandkids, Lord willing. They could all be accessing and utilizing that family bank to do those things that, if it was locked up in a 401k or IRA and, you're waiting for somebody to die to inherit it, to pass it on to the next generation,
yeah,
you never actually get to see the fruit of your labor in the next generation because it requires you to die and pass away.
right.
Which is
And
a
then
sad way to actually live life.
and I like the idea. I mean, I'm assuming you guys agree too. Like it ties in with what John was saying and what Garrett is saying is why not, instead of waiting to have this accumulated pile of passive income, why not create active income now?
Yeah.
So that what I would argue strongly that active income in retirement is better than passive income from from based upon just the interest of a pile or a dwindling pile. Why not have active growing income in retirement that can be benefiting you, now and then into the future? That just to me seems like a much better way to live.
Hmm.
And just again, reiterating the irony is that most people don't ever end up actually using the principal that they stored that or saved up for that
Right.
entire time. And it's the fear-based, scarcity-based, and really, I think there are some significant studies out that show how it affects life, how people who enter retirement, their longevity really plummets at that
Yeah.
point because they lose their purpose, they lose their
Yeah.
meaning and calling, and they're also, by the way, scared of losing money, scared of markets crashing and constantly being uh, staying up at night thinking, will I lose 30% of my money again, like the 2000, 2001, 2002
Yeah.
Yep.
drop in the market and so forth. So yeah, it just creates a lot more freedom and peace.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a balance there. It's you need the security, the guaranteed income. Think of like the annuity or even, life insurance could help in that regard of like people who have that source of guaranteed steady income, stable, actually live longer. They have more fun in retirement. But then if you combine it with somebody who still has purpose and active activity and active income, that person's going to have a much longer life, much more vibrant life, a fuller life, be there to watch grandkids and great grandkids do things. Um, and really actually see the family grow for generations to come. So I think it's a little bit of balance of both. You want a little bit of that security, that base assurance to
Mhm.
know that requirements are going to be met, but then also still having that purpose, vision, values to do those active income type opportunities. I think that's really what a lot of people should be striving for.
Yep. And then also to plug a previous episode, we had one called Unlock. It's called Unlocking. If you look on our in podcast or on YouTube, it's called Unlocking Retirement IBC and the Permission to Spend. Just having that death benefit, that lottery ticket waiting in the wings for the future, that could free you up from having to just guard this nest egg. If you know this nest egg is going to be just refilled when you graduate, as Nelson would call it, when you pass away, that totally frees you up to start spending some of that down to enjoy your life better, more in this during your distribution years. So just by having it, just by having the death benefit, it helps to unlock that asset and frees it up to benefit your family.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Yeah, John, any other insights from Garrett Gunderson in kind of this section here where he's talking about this accumulation versus utilization phases philosophy, as you worded it?
Yeah, there's a ton. And if you haven't read Killing Sacred Cows, I think that's the first book to read if you haven't heard of Garrett Gunderson. And truly just, again, like the output of it. It's not necessarily having the highest balance on your bank account or stock market portfolio or whatever. But it's creating the life that you don't want to retire from and living a meaningful, flourishing, happy, fulfilled life without finances dominating, controlling your every move, and being a slave to either an employer or whatever finances is drawing us to do that we probably wouldn't do otherwise.
Right. Well said. And guys, I really enjoyed this. I think we could talk about this all day long, and we'll probably have more episodes surrounding this idea, this philosophy, this way of life. And if our listeners are interested in getting started with their own family banking system, feel free to reach out to us at thefamilybankingshow@gmail.com. One of us three would love to sit down with you and discuss what this could look like for you and your family. Once again, guys, I want to say thank you to you and thank you to our listeners, and we will see you in our next episode.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. If you're interested in a conversation about anything we've discussed, you can find our contact information in the show notes below.
And subscribe, follow, and leave a review to help spread this message and to help families across the country discover the generational blessing of IBC. May God bless you, and we'll see you next time.